It's character profile time now. And you know what, Gemma? We are not just a podcast for entertainment, we also provide public service. We had a couple of people this week that said thank you for doing Jenny Bradley last week, because they got to find out all about who this mystery redhead was. And this week we're doing a character profile for all the people who thought, who was Leanne referring to when she said she once dated someone and ended up sleeping with his dad? We are talking about Jamie Baldwin this week, and this is
good old moppet-haired Jamie.
I think this is a kind of a period in Coronation Street that we haven't really talked very much about. The whole Baldwin clan, when they were brought in, as like Mike Baldwin was on his last legs, it's kind of it had its time. It was like in and out in a couple of years, and they've completely been forgotten about since. So this is going to be. This was like lots of, oh yeah, that happened when I was doing some research for this. But Jamie Baldwin's the one that stayed there for the longest, so I very much doubt we'll do the other Baldwins as character profiles ever. So this is the Baldwin clan, I suppose. But Jamie was born on the 27th of June 1980 to Danny and Carol Baldwin. He had a half-brother, Warren, and he first appeared on the 19th of July 2004. His last appearance was on the 24th of April 2011, although that was a long time after he properly exited it. He was like on a one-off episode back in 2011. He was in 415 episodes, not so far, in total, and he was played by Rupert Hill, who I discovered hails from Southampton.
He was born here.
He comes from Southampton, just like you do, so...
Brilliant. And
brilliant
me,
for the
Benny
podcast.
Hill and Rupert Hill. Any relation?
All the hills.
I don't know. He was announced to be in the show in April 2004, and he'd already been in one episode of EastEnders, and he was in Family Affairs for 2 years.
Family Affairs. Family Affairs, that's the kiss of death, isn't it? That was the Channel 5 soap that launched with Channel 5, and then I think they pretty much killed all of the cast by blowing them up in a boat accident or something to try and re-energise it or reinvigorate it or something, and then it ended up dying a death a little bit after that.
And they didn't have anyone left.
But anyway, he was in it for a bit, but then he was in Coronation Street. So he came into Coronation Street in 2004, I think a tiny bit after Danny and Frankie. Now, Frankie was not his mum, thank goodness, because of what happens later, but his stepmum, because Dad had married Frankie, who was the babysitter to I don't know, maybe it was the babysitter to Jamie, or maybe it was Warren, I don't know, but anyway, it all got a bit dodgy, and Danny slept with the babysitter, and now they're a couple. So they'd arrived in Weatherfield because Mike Baldwin was going through his Alzheimer's then, so they came to support him, and so did Warren and Jamie. Although Danny was trying to fleece Mike in the end and trying to get him to sort of get more money out of the will and stuff. Frankie was trying to give their marriage another go because she had cheated on him. So,
oh dear,
dishonest Frankie. But out of all the Baldwins, I think Frankie was the one I liked the best.
I liked them all, actually. I thought they were all pretty interesting and fun.
They weren't like usual Corrie characters, and I think part of it is because they were Londoners, wasn't it?
People didn't like them, but I've got nothing against Southerners.
I don't think I like Danny particularly. I think he was
a wide boy.
What's his name? Bradley Walsh that played him.
Yeah.
I think he was just Bradley Walsh in Coronation Street. I didn't necessarily see him as being a character, but I didn't know who the actress who played Frankie was, and I thought she was great. She was little bit of a bimbo, wasn't she? She was a wag, wasn't she? Basically, Frankie, definitely.
Yeah.
Leanne was dating Jamie in 2004 later on, but he dumped her in September because he didn't think he could trust her because she started flirting with Dev, and I'd completely forgotten this has happened.
Anyway, he moved on and started to go out with Maria within a week, and then in 2005 Leanne goes back with Jamie, but then she starts to realise that she's attracted to Danny, his dad.
Yes,
and they have
a secret affair. So this is what Leanne was referring to this
Naughty
week.
Leanne.
Also that year, Jamie tracked down his real mum, Carol, because and I think it was because he wanted to let her know about he found a new girl in Leanne and everything. It turned out that she was an alcoholic living in a rundown flat.
In Birmingham.
He supports her through the problem, going back and forth. Now, Frankie was the first person to discover about Danny's affair because Danny had phoned up I think he must have like phoned up Leanne's place or something to say, oh, I've booked us the room in our hotel, and it was actually Frankie that picked up the phone. I can't remember why she was there. So she discovers about this, and that was also at the time when Leanne and Jamie had got engaged, because even though she was having an affair with Danny, she didn't say no to the idea of marrying his son. I think he'd like taken her away to Holland because he was doing some job in Holland, and they got all romantic there, and so she's like accepted his proposal. But then,
well, she can't exactly say no. I'm going out and bonking your
so
dad.
sorry, I can't marry you. I'm having an affair with your dad at the moment.
I'm fine as it is, though.
Yeah, let's just keep it like this. Well, didn't stay like this because Carol, who was now living in Weatherfield, turned up, and she found out about the affair. Lets Jamie know, so he calls off the engagement and disowned his dad. Now, Carol was a little bit jealous of Frankie because obviously she is Jamie's real mum, and Frankie was like the imposter mum. Yeah, so she saw her as a total threat and insinuated that the pair had been sleeping together. They threw her out, and I think that was the last we saw of her. In reality, they were actually questioning their feelings towards each other, and this was a bit of a taboo subject, isn't it? It was like incest, but not really incest. But when I think back to the Baldwin clan, what I remember is, oh yeah, they were the family where the son and the mum had an affair.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really that. But
I know, but it's just it's just wrong enough to make it a bit exciting.
Yeah, a bit exciting, but also a bit seedy. Yeah, exactly.
A bit dirty.
But to put off these urges, Jamie started dating Violet Wilson, who just split up with Jason. Violet was the one.
He's got Sean's kid.
Yeah, that's right. And she was a barmaid at the time.
Sour-faced old prune.
Was she? I don't remember much about her. She's played by Jenny Platt, I think her name is, and she's actually going out with Rupert Hill in real life. There's a fact.
What a blissful couple they must be.
But anyway, she just split up with Jason, but the relationship didn't work because he realised, no, I can't help it, I'm in love with my stepmum.
And then, in October of 2006, during Fred Elliott's funeral, Jamie decides to declare his love for Frankie, and they start an affair. And then Danny finds out and has a fight with Jamie, and they next to the canal, and they both fall in. Jamie is knocked unconscious, and Danny has to drag him out.
Yeah, every time I see when Fred Elliott died, I think, was it really that long ago? Because we're going to come up next year to the 10th anniversary of Fred Elliott's death.
You just got to let him go.
I can't let him go. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago since he died. Same with Mike Baldwin. It's crazy.
Just accept it.
Anyway, he split up with Violet towards the end of the year. It wasn't because about the affair. Well, she didn't know about the affair. She was none the wiser about it. In fact, she had suspected that he'd had feelings for Sean because he was hanging around Sean quite a lot, but she was wrong there. Danny disappeared at the end of the year, and although Jamie and Frankie planned to start a new life in Spain, she had a change of heart. She was like, no, I'm going out with my stepson here. This is all a bit weird, and she left him and Weatherfield. And the last we saw of her was on New Year's Eve 2006, and Danny as well, because just as the clock was chiming midnight, Danny phoned up Jamie to tell him he sold his 60% share of the factory and their flat, and left Jamie the only remaining Baldwin on the street, because Mike had died by this point.
What a legacy he had to fulfil.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later, the Baldwin legacy.
2007, this is the next day.
Yes, 1st of January.
Yeah. Violet recently revealed to Jamie that she was pregnant, but she suffered an ectopic pregnancy and had a miscarriage.
Yeah. And I think at this point that she knew that he'd been having an affair with Frankie as well. So he also got a job at Streetcars that year, and this is when the whole storyline with Violet having a baby with Sean came, because Violet and Sean had been old schoolmates together, and they made a pact that if they weren't seeing anyone, if they didn't have a baby by the time they were 30, they'd have one together. And
once you make a pact like that, I mean, you can't go back. So they were sort of, it was inevitable.
They had a bit of a turkey-baster baby, didn't they? Violet and Sean did. Jamie thought that was a little bit weird. But
then he ends up getting together with her, and they plan to raise the baby as their own, and they didn't want Sean to be involved.
And they were pretty horrible to Sean as well, because Sean wanted to be a dad, and he.
What's the point of him doing it then? Because I mean, she could have had a kid with the other bloke.
Well, I think at the time she wasn't going out with the
She's
other bloke,
horrible.
was she? Well, yeah, Sean wanted to be a dad, and she just like treated him as, well, you're not the father, you're just like the donor. Or something.
Cow.
And then, but when Violet gave birth to this baby Dylan, Jamie was down in London and Sean was there to help with the delivery. And they ended up kind of making up by the end of the year. But oh no, it wasn't the end of the year. This is only a few months into the year. Sorry. So the 29th of February.
Leap year. That's the crazy
Hang on a minute,
day.
this can't be right because this is 2007. That wasn't a leap year. I think I'm wrong somewhere on my notes.
You've probably done it wrong, haven't you?
I think
anyway,
I think this is probably the 29th of February 2008.
Anyway, on the 29th of February, that's the day when women are allowed to do crazy things like drive cars and propose to men and smoke cigarettes. So Violet decided to do one of those and propose to Jamie, who accepted. Then they packed up, moved to London, and left Sean screaming,
"My son!"
in the street.
Yeah.
This was at the height of his Anthony Cotton's
I'm in
diva
everything.
phase,
Yeah.
How the Mighty Have Fallen.
I felt sorry for Sean, but whenever I think my son is kind of a. This is one of these phrases that we've picked up from Coronation Street, isn't it? It's a param.
Param. This is when the producers went, maybe we should scale him back a bit.
He got to see him more later.
Reel it in, Tony.
Well, by 2011, Sean was on speaking terms to Violet. He went to London to visit Dylan, and Jamie was there. But he and Violet were rowing. She'd had an affair with a gardener, and he left her. And Sean and I think Marcus was with him then, had a lovely trip around London, but we did get to find out that Violet and Jamie had split up, and that's the last we know about them.
Aww.
So his departure was announced in April 2007. Yes, it was 2008 that he left. Now, he didn't really like the level of fame that Coronation Street brought him, and he wanted to try different roles in acting.
That's the only thing I don't like about this podcast.
What?
Is the level of fame that it's brought me, and how I can't go anywhere
they're
without
gonna
people
have to
going,
quit him.
what's that voice?
That voice.
That dulcet tones that I hear so intimately in my ear rolls every weekend.
Well,
is it you, Gemma?
We're going to have to quit because I don't want to get typecast. I want to try different roles in podcasting.
I want to do a Bigfoot podcast. What do you want to do?
Nintendo, of course.
Okay.
I could do that.
Well, just like us, he decided to do different things, and he went.
That meant the bill.
The bill.
That was basically the only thing of note that he did after Coronation Street.
Well,
that was in 2008. He played a criminal.
That's the only thing you think of. Maybe he's done some things that he's very proud of.
No, I don't think he has. Well, he's done a. He's now in a relationship with Jenny Platt, like we said. He owns 4 pubs in Manchester.
Well, then he doesn't need any money, does he?
We could have gone there. That could have been a trip on our Coronation Street tour. Found out where he is.
And
said, hello, we're from Southampton too.
Have you seen my son?
Recently. He was in a few films, like British independent films. A horror film called Entity from 2012. We should look into that one.
Good film.
You haven't seen it?
No.
We should look into it. He is now on stage. He's playing the role of Guy in the touring production of The Full Monty, alongside Andrew Dunn, who played Roger in Coronation Street. Yeah.
Look, you're slacking him off and saying he hasn't done anything. He's been in loads of stuff. 3 things.
3 things. He's no Sarah Lancashire.
Not everyone can, go off and be a female detective or a female TARDIS or a female character in Mr. Selfridge. I mean, he didn't even have a chance, did he? He's got the wrong chromosomes.
Yeah, but now he's on the Full Monty, showing his willy every night to the crowds.
He has to trade on those good looks while they still last. He said,
here's a quote, you say it.
I got paid incredibly well, and starring in Coronation Street was a very enjoyable job, and I made really good friends. But I've always wanted to be an actor. And part of what attracted me to the profession was the diversity of roles you can get. In the end, I accepted that I was going to have to take a pay cut and face up to the possibility that I might never work again. It didn't matter though. I had to take a risk and leave Corrie in 2007 because I didn't want to play Jamie Baldwin for the next 25 years.
Well, I don't think...
Give in the mouth.
Yeah, I don't think they'll bring him back, although they could, because there's still the Sean link, isn't there, about. But
if I was in Corrie as like a gold chip surnamed character, one of the golden families of the street, the legacy families, I would stay there until they turfed me out with a pitchfork.
Well, yeah, so I think we should talk a bit about the fact that they were trying to make sure the Baldwin name didn't die out, and that must have been the whole point of bringing this lot in, because Mike Baldwin, Johnny Briggs, did he quit or was he pushed? I think he quit, and then they had this really long Alzheimer's storyline for him, didn't they? And then they were like, oh, we got to keep the Baldwin name. Got to keep the Barlows, got to keep the Baldwins, got to keep...
Got to keep the Duckworths.
Oh, yeah, so they brought in these 4 and they didn't last very long. And I think I like the idea of keeping names running because...
I do as well, I really do.
But you've got to have the characters in. You can't just like insert them in and say, look, here's a whole new
look, it's
corner
Tommy,
of the family. Tommy's a perfect example as well because he came in after Jack died. If Tommy had been in it while Jack and maybe even Vera was still alive, you can think, okay, yeah, he's a Duckworth. But as it was like, who's this person claiming to be a Duckworth? He's not really a Duckworth. I know Tommy does exist, but he doesn't fit in, and it kind of smacks of...
It makes more sense to bring in a character and you say, remember that character we talked to you about, and he's got an established backstory, albeit a very brief one.
Well, Tommy did have that,
That's what I'm
didn't he?
saying.
But, yeah.
Instead of like, here's a bunch of people that you've never heard of, but they happen to be related.
So. Yeah. So Tommy was a little bit more. But the whole thing with when these extra Baldwins came in was,
extra Baldwins.
I think there was a bit of retconning involved as well because Mike supposedly never had a brother, but then it turned out that he had to have had a brother because now he's got a nephew or something. But then it turned out that Danny wasn't actually Mike's nephew, he was his son or something like that. I can't remember. And then it was also confusing because Mike's dad was called Frankie as well, so there was already a Frankie Baldwin, and it was all a bit weird. And it didn't work, but it could have done. I mean, there was nothing particularly wrong with Danny or Frankie particularly. They could have stayed, but
I thought they were. I liked them.
The thing is, if Danny had stayed in charge of the factory, we wouldn't have had Carla in charge of the factory now, and I think we've got the best out of the two options here. They've also done it, I suppose, with bringing the Tanner name back in recently, haven't they? Although, I mean, that's still a person who's been in Coronation Street. It's not like... Yeah, it's not like, here's a new Tanner, like...
This is Dennis's daughter, who you never mentioned.
Well, this is the thing. When Dennis was in it, we never really found anything at all about what he'd been doing in the intervening 40 years, had we? And they could have expanded the Tanner family. They could have said, well, I had a daughter and this family, and they want to move to Weatherfield. They still could, but... You
still have somebody turn up and go, oh, Rita... I'm Dennis's daughter that he didn't even know he had. Have you seen him?
Yeah, because Rita is now Rita Tanner, but that still sounds weird to say, and it's like she's not really.
This
Rita
is what
Tanner,
I get really annoyed with, all these people that change their surnames and then their spouses bugger off and they're stuck there with this random surname.
Yeah,
it's so
well, some
weird
change
to
it back straight away, and some will keep it, won't they? Because maybe it's just the hassle of doing it.
It's just weird because obviously Coronation Street is all about the women. And it's the women that have to change their names, and so it's the men that sort of end up being done in.
The problem is, though, when you've been married as many times as the likes of Gail and Rita, what do you turn it back to? Do you just go back to your maiden name, or do you pick your favourite husband and stick with that one? Gail's not going to go back to Hillman or...
You know, well, I didn't change my name when I got married in the first place. I was thinking it's just easier. It certainly would cause a lot less hassle with this lot.
One character that I thought that did work well, kind of... To carry on the family lineage was Peter Barlow, because he came back in 2000, I think, and he'd not really been in it. He'd been on and off when he was little, but not as a proper character, and he's slotted in very well. And now there will be Barlows in the street for however many years to come, won't there? Because there's he's gone, but there's still Simon, who I'm sure they'll want to keep. Almost solely because they want to have a Barlow in the street. But I suppose there's Amy as well, isn't there? And there's the Tracy side of it.
And Barlow's Buys, what a legacy.
Yeah, well, there have always got to be Barlows in the street.
It's kind of like the Ravens at the Tower of London.
Yes, if the Barlows don't leave, then the Coronation Street collapse. I wonder of other names that are there, who they were going to want to keep forever. I mean, I suppose the Websters now. Websters isn't a proper classic Coronation Street name, but I think they will want to keep those, and the McDonald's, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think I'd quite like it if like a long lost Ogden or something turned back up.
I think it's cool if they do that. I'd like it. I don't see a problem. It's like bringing Jenny Bradley back. They've got to trade on the fact that they're this long-running soap. It's their USP, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean the Bradleys are obviously not a big family that went on forever, but Alan Bradley is a name that's remembered as one of the big early villains. But Ogden is definitely a name that you associate with Coronation Street, and it'd be cool, I think, just to have an Ogden back in it. Even though that, I suppose, would just end up feeling exactly like these new Baldwins did, which is like, no, you're not.
Fine.
They made you up to.
Yeah, you're just
for the
a figment of my imagination.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for them for like. Well, they could do it, I suppose. One of these days, Sally is going to get a phone call to say that Hilda's died. I just know it. It'd be sad, and then they could have some. Ex-Ogdens coming out of the woodwork.
I'd like a glam female blonde Ogden to turn up, like called Matilda Ogden, and everyone thinks she's gonna look like Mary, but she looks like.
There is a glam Ogden, isn't there? I've forgotten what they're all called now. What was that one Ogden that disappeared and the actress, she just decided she didn't want to be it anymore. Irma Ogden, was it?
Oh yeah, Irma, classic glamorous Ogden.
Yeah, so maybe some Ogdens can turn up on the street. I'd like that. Well, who would you like, listeners? If you could bring back any old surnames or families, resurrect any old Corrie families, who would you like?
Coronation Street is like Game of Thrones with all the house families.
Yeah, the House of Ogden will rise again. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe not.